there's a lot of HOA fees that tend to hit buyers and sellers in the resale process. And a lot of them you don't even know are coming. And depending on how the contract selections are done between the buyer and the seller, they can be $1,000 in fees. Like I would say commonly, they're probably at least $300. That's kind of like the low end of the scale of what I see, all the way up to $700, $800, $900. And that's if you have one HOA. Some properties here that I've sold have 3 HOAs. So because there's some overlap, one covers the grounds, one covers the rec. There a few years ago, the state made some changes to the requirements on those, and a lot of them had to split and become 2 different HOAs when there was only one before. Well, that means twice as many fees. So I'm going to talk to the common fees that I usually see in the resale process. And so the first one, I'll just get right into it and I'll see if I can keep on track for y'all, is what I call the docs fee or the documents fee. Sometimes it's called a CIC docs fee, something like that, that the HOA charges to provide a package on behalf of the seller to the buyer of all of the HOA documents. Because in our contract, the buyer has the right, assuming that they didn't waive the deadlines, they have the right to receive all of the association documents and review those. And then either they can just terminate. You can't object to those because there's nothing anyone can change about them. But the HOA management companies oftentimes will charge the seller to provide those. Now they will charge the seller through the title company. So if you want to save one fee out of all of these, this is the one to save. This is the one that as a seller, you have the right to get those documents directly from your HOA without being charged. If you have the title company do it or your lender do it or your realtor do it, or not your lender, but your realtor or somebody else do it, they can charge us. Well, if they charge us, we're going to charge you because that's something that you should have provided and we're just doing it as a service to you. And now you have a $200 fee you didn't have to pay. So if you can go get all of your documents to meet your contractual obligations, go get those yourself and save yourself $200, $300, $400. It's really, really common for those to cost anywhere between $150 and $300. Go online to your HOA portal and go download all of the HOA documents you can possibly find and give those over to the buyer. Okay? So that's going to be the first fee, is the documents fee. So whatever the HOA documents that you need to provide. The second one is going to be a really common one as well, is the status letter fee. So this is essentially the HOA or the management company saying, seller, you have paid all your dues. Buyer, here's what we charge all of the buyers per our documents requirements and per our DACs and bylaws. And title company, here is what you need to take from the buyer and what you need to take from the seller and pay us. Okay? So the status letter, a lot of times there's rush fees on. So that's going to be fee number 3. But the status letter is something that you're going to have to pay for. It's administrative cost. It's administrative function. But in the contract, in the Colorado State contract, you can select who pays that. Is the buyer going to pay it? Is the seller going to pay it? Are we going to split it? There isn't one, which is pretty unusual unless there's just no HOA at all, or something else, right? So, and depending on how fast you need that status letter will determine whether there's any rush fees. So the rush fees suck. When you have a buyer that's like, hey, I want to close in a week, and you're like, hoo-hoo, I can get my money in a week and walk away and not deal with this, you may not realize that the rush fee from your HOA to get a status letter to the title company, so the title company knows who to charge what, and that everything is clear as far as title. Nobody can file a lien on the property, which title wants to make sure. It may cost $500 to get that in a week. Cool. Well, if that's important to you and is closing faster, then that $500 is worth it to get it done quicker. Cool. But if you allow adequate time to get these, then maybe you won't have to pay rush fees or third-party fees. I'll kind of lump this into the same thing. Some title companies will order these HOA documents through a third party, and those third parties are like, cool, we're going to charge $45 for our service. We're going to tack that on too. So just transfer or administrative, kind of like the rush fees or the third party fees, is another big chunk of those, especially if you're trying to sell your property quickly or your buyer wants to close really quickly. Okay. The fourth one that I'm going to talk about, which is a really common one as well, is a transfer fee, also called a record change fee or new owner fee, something like that can be, but essentially it is the HOA's charge for taking the property. They have a property address and say, okay, owner A no longer owns this, owner B does. Here's their contact information. We're going to send them some payment coupons. We're going to get them set up on the newsletter, get them set up on the online portal, and that whole administrative function for the HOA of changing their records of who owns the property. In the contract, that is also an option you can select of who pays that. So the reason I'm talking about these is depending on how you check those boxes or how your agent explains the offer to you that you get if you're a seller or a buyer, how the agent helps explain how you are writing and submitting that offer, because as a buyer, it is your offer, that can determine who pays these fees. And sometimes when you're writing these offers and when the sellers are receiving them, you don't know what they are. So you don't know if they're $100 or if they're $1,000. That makes a difference, okay? Make sure, if you want me to help you with this and you're in the South Denver area, click down below. I have a calendar link. You can schedule an appointment. I am passionate about people understanding things. So I am very passionate about these fees. And I'll also link to a video up above and down below where I talk about that change in the contract, and I reference a little bit more of the items that need to be paid more attention to save money on those items. So, but the documents fee, the status letter fee, and the transfer fee are probably the three most common that most HOAs are going to have. Sometimes they'll bundle a couple of them together. You'll get a documents with the status letter, or they'll bundle a status letter and a transfer fee, and then they'll charge the documents separately. They'll do different things. But the next one I'm going to talk to is working capital. And this is not necessarily a fee, but this is essentially something that some HOAs charges, or a thing that some HOAs charge that is money to help usually go into their reserves. Sometimes they put it in their operating budget, but usually it goes into their reserves to help bulk up their reserves for major spending items. And a lot of times this is refundable if you read your documents. And this can be a major closing cost expense for buyers too, because there's the HOAs in town that charge 6 months working capital up front or 6 months HOA fees up front. Depending on the monthly HOA fee, that can be a lot of money. That can affect your closing cost numbers. Hopefully it doesn't change your ability to qualify to purchase the property. But understanding, is there working capital? If so, how much is it? And for the seller, is it refundable? And for the buyer, is it refundable? Is it something you will get back when you sell the property or get credited back? And the title company will say, hey, you get this extra money back from the HOA because you already paid it in. Or is it non-refundable working capital? Is that just money that because you bought it, it goes into the HOA, they get to keep it forever no matter what, okay? So just keep an eye on that one as well. That will be in your HOA documents if there is working capital and how much it is and whether or not it's refundable. Another one that's a little bit less common is going to be your amenities access. So like your pool cards, your gate fob, your key fob to get into the fitness facility, things like that. Some HOAs have a mandatory charge for new owners at closing that they go ahead and charge, $20, $50, $100 to make you new cards, new fobs, and all that stuff. Most of the time, the expectation is that those are conveyed from the seller to the new owner as a means of keys or access to the property and the amenities that you're purchasing. However, some HOAs do charge those amenities access charges up front, or maybe an administrative charge to set up a new online OpenPath account or something like that. So that's another item that would be listed on the status letter, but it's actually a separate fee item, and that is not called out in the contract. However, there is an item in the contract in section 15 right now that says, hey, any other charges that the HOA might charge that aren't already called out above, that's not a status letter, that's not a record change or transfer fee, that's not a working capital charge or advanced assessments or something, any other item, who's going to pay that? Okay, pay attention to that, because I just saved one of my buyers $50 because the title company said, hey, HOA says buyer needs to pay for a new pool card. I was like, cool, based on our contract, it says seller does, because we chose that the seller pays for any fees that we don't know what they're going to be, because buyer doesn't want to sign up to pay God knows what. So pay attention to those things. Those things matter, okay? A lot of little things add up. And then the last one is more buyer side, but it's a condo cert fee or a condo questionnaire fee or something like that. So if you are a buyer purchasing a condo, and that can be a townhome, but if it's legally classified as a condo, if the HOA is classified as a condo, then a lot of times the lender is going to have to get a condo cert or condo certificate. And what that is a list of questions that the lender says, hey, I need answers to this information, like how much money's in the reserves, when was the last time the roof was done, all of these things that can snowball potentially into a buyer not being able to pay their mortgage. That's essentially why they're asking, is they want to make sure that the HOA is not going to hit the buyer with a bunch of fees or special assessments or dues increases that's going to prevent the buyer from paying their mortgage and cause them to default on the loan. So the lender's going to send this list of questions to the HOA, and then they need the HOA to answer those and get that back to the lender. Well, the HOA says, cool, that's administrative function. A lot of lenders have different lists of questions. We have to deal with those one by one. We're going to charge for that. And that will, on the buyer side, usually be on the buyer's closing statement. It's not something in the contract that you can negotiate who pays what. It's separate from an HOA requirement. It's more of a lending charge. And so that's usually going to be under the loan origination section, but it's only required because the HOA the fee for it is usually whatever the HOA charges. So anyway, hopefully that answers some questions for y'all as far as what some really common HOA resale fees are. And then I'll link to a video up above and down below, that very first one where I mentioned go get your docs yourself, save yourself some money. I'm really passionate about that because you have access to those documents already. You don't need a third party to order those from a third party company just to have a bunch of middlemen get documents that you have the right to as an owner in the homeowners association. So if you'd like to interview me to help you buy or sell here in the Denver metro area because maybe you had a bad experience with this and you want somebody who's more detailed, I'm that person, if you can't tell based on my videos. So feel free to schedule a time for an appointment right off my calendar, or you can reach out to me directly. My contact information is down there as well. So thanks so much for the time. Hopefully you're liking my videos. If this was helpful, hit the like button. If you're liking my videos, subscribe to my channel. So thanks so much and have a great day.